Every single year, without fail, a shape-shifting serpent god slithers up from beneath the earth to steal something that belongs to the god of the sky, his cattle, his wife, sometimes his own son. And every single year, the sky god chases him down with lightning, kills him, and gets it back. Then months later, the serpent reconstitutes itself in the underworld and does it again. This isn't a myth about one battle. It's a myth about a battle that never actually ends, reconstructed by scholars almost entirely from fragments, folk songs, wedding chants, and children's rhymes scattered across Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and the Balkans, because almost none of it survived being written down directly. Christian missionaries spent centuries trying to erase the old Slavic gods, and mostly succeeded, except for the pieces of this specific story, which survived by hiding in plain sight inside folklore nobody thought to burn. At the top of the world, in the branches of an immense world tree that Slavic tradition believed connected every layer of existence, lived Perun, god of thunder, sky, war, and the ruling order of things. He was imagined riding a fiery chariot across the heavens, wielding a stone or iron axe capable of splitting anything it struck, and everywhere in the old Slavic lands, his symbol was the oak, the tallest, hardest, most lightning-struck tree in the forest, sacred to him specifically because lightning seemed to seek it out. At the roots of that same world tree, in the dark waters and earth below, lived Veles, the exact inversion of everything Perun represented. Where Perun ruled the ordered sky, Veles ruled the wild, unplowed underworld, god of cattle and wealth, but also of magic, trickery, poetry, and the dead. He was most often imagined not walking upright like a person, but coiled as an enormous serpent or dragon, wound around the base of the world tree the way a snake winds around any tree it's claimed as its own. The two gods were not equals, sharing a peaceful cosmos. Perun represented order, hierarchy, the warrior class, the world as it was supposed to work. Veles represented everything that slipped outside that order. Wealth that could be stolen, magic that bent rules, boundaries that a determined trickster could always find a way around. Slavic tradition placed them in permanent structural opposition, sky against earth, order against chaos, the tree's crown against its own roots. It was only a matter of time before the tension between them stopped being architectural and became a war. The old story, pieced back together by linguists and folklorists from fragments scattered across centuries of Slavic folk song, begins with Veles doing what Veles always does, reaching for something that isn't his. Different regional versions disagree on exactly what he steals. In some tellings, it's Perun's cattle, driven down from the sky god's own pastures into the dark underworld. In others, it's Perun's own wife, or his son, taken while the thunder god's attention was elsewhere. In still others, what Veles steals is water itself, the rains that belong to the sky hoarded away underground, leaving the earth above dry and starving. Whatever the exact object, the transgression is always the same shape. Veles, the serpent of the roots, slithers up out of his own domain and into Perun's, and takes something that was never his to take. It's not framed as simple theft for its own sake. Veles is consistently the trickster, the one who understands that boundaries exist specifically to be tested, and every version of this myth treats his crossing into Perun's territory as inevitable, almost seasonal, the way water always finds the lowest point whether or not it's supposed to be there. Perun does not respond with negotiation. The moment he discovers what has been taken, the sky itself answers. Clouds gather with unnatural speed. Thunder rolls before there's anything to explain it. And Perun, furious in a way that only a god of order violated by a god of chaos can be, comes down from the world tree's crown after him. What followed, in every surviving fragment of the myth, is a chase across the entire visible world, Perun hurling thunderbolts at a serpent that refuses to stand and fight, because Velus's power was never brute strength to begin with. It was evasion, transformation, hiding in the last place anyone would think to look. Velus fled first beneath a tree, and Perun's lightning split it down to the roots looking for him, which Slavic folk memory offers as the actual reason lightning is drawn to old solitary trees standing in open fields to this day. Velus fled next beneath a boulder, and Perun's lightning cracked the stone in half to flush him out. Velus fled by disguising himself as a man, hiding among ordinary people, and Perun's storm rolled through anyway, unwilling to let a human shield stop him. Velus fled as various animals, sliding into any living form that might let him pass unnoticed. Each time, Perun found him. Each time, the lightning came down closer, and the serpent had one hiding place left, and then none. The chase wasn't fast in the way a single duel is fast. It was relentless, methodical, storm after storm, until Velus had run out of every disguise between the sky and the ground. Finally cornered, Velus fled into the one place Perun's fire genuinely could not follow him completely: the deep water, the lake or river or sea that marked the boundary of his own underworld domain. Perun struck the water's surface with everything he had, splitting it, and Velus struck at last, defeated, unable to run any further, dissolved back down into the depths he'd come from. And as he fell, everything he had stolen was released at once. The cattle scattered back across the hills, the stolen rains finally breaking free of the ground that had hoarded them, falling from the sky in a torrent that soaked the entire parched earth below. That torrent of rain, in the old Slavic understanding of the myth, was the entire point. Perun's victory wasn't really about punishing Velus for the theft. It was about forcing the release of exactly what the earth needed to survive. The rain that fell after Perun split the water open was remembered as the rain that ended a drought, watered the crops, and restored fertility to fields that had gone dry while Velus hoarded what belonged to the sky. Velus wasn't destroyed by any of this. He never is in any surviving version of the story. Wounded, driven back underground, forced to disgorge what he'd stolen, but very much alive, coiled once again at the roots of the world tree, waiting. The myth was never framed as a war with an ending. It was framed as a war with a rhythm: theft, pursuit, defeat, release, and then, inevitably, months or a season later, theft again. Scholars who reconstructed this myth from scattered folk songs and incantations, since almost none of it survived as a direct written record, buried under centuries of Christianization that actively worked to erase Perun, Velus, and every other Slavic god from official memory, noticed something else striking about the pattern. It wasn't unique to the Slavic world at all. A thunder god chasing down a serpent or dragon that has stolen waters, cattle, or order itself shows up across nearly every Indo-European mythology that survives in any detail. Indra battling the serpent Vritra in the Vedic tradition, Thor battling the world serpent in Norse myth, Zeus battling the monstrous Typhon in Greek myth. Different names, different oak trees, the same storm. Which means the fight between Perun and Velus isn't just a myth explaining Slavic weather patterns. It may be one surviving branch of one of the oldest story structures human beings ever told each other, going back to a shared mythology older than the Slavic, Norse, Greek, and Vedic peoples ever splitting apart from one another in the first place. Every culture that descended from that shared root kept a version of the sky god and the serpent, kept the chase, kept the storm, kept the rain at the end of it. And most of them forgot, the way the Slavic peoples very nearly did, that all these separate thunder and serpent stories were ever the same story to begin with. Every spring storm that breaks a long, dry spell, every bolt of lightning that splits an old oak standing alone in a field, was once somebody's explanation for exactly this. Velus reaching for something that wasn't his, and Perun coming down from the world tree to take it back. The war between the sky and the earth was never a single battle to be won. It was the weather itself, repeating every single year, for as long as anyone in the old Slavic lands could remember. And, if the linguists reconstructing it are right, for a great deal longer than that. Subscribe if you want more. See you in the next one.